Hi, I'm Ashley Harwood, and in this video, I'm going to talk about pursuit of craftsmanship. Whether you're just starting out or you're several years into your pursuit and you're looking to make improvements, how do you do it? How do you get started? Or how do you make that leap from where you are now to where you want to be? So I think some people fall into the line of thinking that it takes a lot of luck to make it as an artist or a craftsperson, or that you really only make it when you're dead. Part of why I wanted to have this channel was to show people that you can make a living as a craftsperson. You can make it work, but you're going to have to work your butt off to make it happen. It's not going to be easy. Nobody's going to hand it to you. You're not going to have these tool companies or these machine companies beating down your door saying, hey, can we give you a bunch of free stuff right now? I never anticipated a lot of the things that have happened in my career so far. I never anticipated that I would be traveling all over the world for wood turning. That wasn't something I thought that was going to happen. And I'm so excited to see what happens in the future. I would say that my highest goal at this point in time going forward, and with this YouTube channel, is to inspire others. Whether it's to try wood turning, or glass blowing, or pottery, or dance, or anything, any type of pursuit that you might not have put your toe in the water yet. But I'll tell you, and we talked about it with my friend Jeff in the last video, once you start to make that time in your life for your creativity to come out, everything in your life will get better. I think I was about 5 years old when I first told my parents, I want to be an artist when I grow up. It was something that never changed. I knew that I wanted to make things with my hands. And what those things were changed over the years, but the fact that I wanted to make things never did. I used to make quilts with my grandmother. I used to make little dolls. I used to do drawing and painting. I think when I was a teenager, I started getting into sculpture. And once I went to three-dimensional work, I never went back. I went to school and I studied sculpture and installation art, so really impractical stuff. Like every good art school student, when I got out, I started working in restaurants. I worked in restaurants in Washington, D.C. for a little while, and then eventually I moved to Charleston and was working in restaurants here. I knew that I wanted to figure out how to start making my living making things, and I thought I was going to be a glass blower. My dad introduced me to wood turning, and when I tried it, I thought, okay, I can make this work. My dad and I took a class together in January of 2009. That same year, I applied for the Charleston Farmers Market with the pieces that I made in that class, and to my surprise, I got in. I got in and I thought, oh, now I have to make a whole bunch of stuff. How am I going to do this? How am I going to make this happen? There were a lot of days my first year at that market that I didn't sell anything, and I kept going. So I thought that my biggest issue with the farmers market would be trying to keep up with my own sales. And I was so wrong. I needed to figure out how to bring value to my customers. It wasn't enough that I thought my work was great or that my friends and family thought my work was great. I needed to find a way to convince my customers that it was worth their money, that it was worth their time to talk to me, and that whatever it was that I was trying to sell, which in this case was wooden bowls, were somehow going to enrich their life. The other thing that I didn't realize was going to be an issue at all is that people were assuming that I wasn't making the work, that I was just a salesperson, that somebody had hired this girl and stuck her in a booth to sell the work. So one thing I ended up doing, I ended up taking these photographs of me turning a really big bowl and blowing them up and putting them in my booth. Another thing that I started doing was bringing my lathe with me every day. And this took an awful lot of effort for me, especially since I was working as a bartender late at night, so being up early in the morning was kind of tough. So that farmer's market that starts in April and goes until Christmas, and it's every Saturday, I did it for 7 years. For 7 years, I was waking up at 4:30 in the morning on a Saturday, taking my car with my little trailer down there, hauling my lathe out, setting up my tent, setting up my tables, and putting on a perky smile and talking to people and trying to convince them that my work was worth their money. Now, I'm not in that farmer's market anymore, but I'm still working my butt off. We had a student in here recently who had been an executive chef. And I asked him, so what made you want to get into woodworking? And he said, I thought the hours would be more reasonable. Well, you know, it's a lot of work. It's a lot of hours. Sure, it can be very gratifying at the end of the day. It's nice to work from home, but it is a lot of hours. When I say a lot of hours, I'm talking 10 to 12 hour days, pretty much every day of the week. I would say, you know, maybe once out of every 3 or 4 weeks, I'll take a weekend off, but it doesn't happen often. Now, I'm not saying that to complain. I just say that to give an idea of what kind of dedication it takes. I know you've heard the thing about 10,000 hours and putting in the time and all that stuff to get better, right? So I have a similar story. When I was taking glass blowing classes, I was super proud of myself when I made my first goblet. Making a goblet in glass blowing is really difficult. So I made my first goblet, I took it up to my instructor and I said, look, I made a goblet. And he goes, that's nice, Ashley. Now just make 500 of them and then you'll be good at it. I think at this point in time, I've made somewhere over 3,000 ornaments. He was right. There was a big improvement after the first 500 and a big improvement after the next 500 and a big improvement after the next 500. I think an important part of being a craftsperson is getting comfortable with the idea of repetition. A good friend of mine, Mike Mahoney, said something that made me laugh one time. We were talking about the kind of person who says, oh, I don't like to make the same thing over and over again. I think that would be terribly boring. I don't want to do that. And he said, when I hear that, I hear the whine of a poor craftsperson. And it's true. Now, I thought that I was one of those people at one point in time. I thought it'd be incredibly boring to make the same thing over and over again. But after doing some of those jobs, I found that it's so gratifying to see my own improvements, to see that I was getting faster and better all at the same time. And I could measure it through the course of a job. I knew exactly how long it took me to make the first one. I knew it took a much shorter period of time for me to make the second one. And I could see the improvements in the turning. One thing that I think that we don't do when we're thinking about pursuing a craft is we don't pursue it like it's a career. Other people that are going after more regular jobs, they're going to go to college. They're going to study. They're going to spend a lot of money to go to college. They're going to take several years of their life to put into pursuing that thing, to try and have the privilege of making a career out of it. And then it might work and it might not. I think that we shortchange ourselves when we don't pursue a craft in the same way. You need to expect that it's probably not going to pay off for the first several years. You're learning, and then you're building on what you've learned, and you're building on what you've learned, and you're building on what you've learned. Not only are you learning how to do what you do, but you also have to learn about your audience and what they want from you. Learn about your customers. So, we've talked about the comparison between, being a craftsperson and being a person with a regular job who goes to college and gets out of school after 4 years and expects to have a career. But you also have to know that you're going to be learning for the rest of your life. All kinds of things that you never thought you'd have to do. I think a lot of people don't realize that all the stuff, all the wiring in here, well, I guess my students that have come here and seen it probably know that I did it myself, but I had to wire up my own 3-phase converter in order to be able to run some of my machinery. You have to be a handyman. You have to be a business person. You have to be a marketing person. And you have to be the person that's making the things. One big regret of mine is that I never took any business classes in college. That's something that I feel like every art school person should do. If you're going to be an artist, you're going to be running your own business. I was going to say, especially at the beginning of your career, but really the whole time, you have to be resourceful. Now, I got some comments when I put out this bandsaw video. People think, oh, well, if only I could afford that, blah, blah, blah. That, I think maybe some people think that was given to me. But let me tell you, I chose to buy that bandsaw instead of having air conditioning in my car in South Carolina because having a bandsaw was more important. You make sacrifices and you do what you need to do to make it happen. You invest in yourself, you take that leap, and you don't stop until you get there. I had no idea where wood turning was going to take me. I had no idea I was going to be a teacher. I had no idea I was going to have a YouTube channel or any of those other sorts of things. That was not in my brain at all. I just thought, I want to make my work, and I want to make a living making my work. Now, I think a lot about my pursuit to craftsmanship and really trying to get good at it. I draw a lot of analogies to when I was learning piano when I was younger. I took piano lessons for 8 years. I think that I had some natural talent in the piano, but I didn't practice. I would go to regional competitions every year and I could never win more than an awards of excellence because I didn't practice. I think everybody's heard practice, 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 and practice makes perfect. That's not quite true. Practice makes permanent. That's something my mentor taught me. If you're practicing the wrong thing, just like in piano, if I would play the wrong note in a particular song, it could become muscle memory, and I would play the same wrong note over and over and over and over again. You want to make sure that you learn a good set of techniques. I think it's so important to step away from making things for a while and just practice your technique. I mean, you don't sit down at the piano for the first time and play Beethoven's Pathétique. It doesn't work that way. You have to start by playing your chords and playing your scales. And it's the same thing in wood turning. Break it down to the most basic cuts and start from there and do the same cut over and over and over and over again until you get it right. Do another cut over and over and over and over again until you get it right. And then you can start to put them together and make an object. But I think it's so important to give yourself that time to practice. We have to learn the technique before we can really get to that place where our true creativity comes in. You might have some brilliant ideas, but if you don't have the technical ability to make them come to life, you're going to be struggling to get those ideas out. I think you're doomed for disappointment if you get into a craft thinking that you want to make it rich. I don't think many people get into a craft with that goal in mind. It's not typically a way to get rich, but it is a way to have a fulfilling life. One thing that I think is so special about working with your hands, and especially if you can get to that point where other people want to have your work too. It's almost like there's a little piece of you, like there's a little teeny tiny piece of your soul in every single piece that you've worked on. And it's so different from anything that's machine made. Every single piece that I sold had my hands on it. It had my work in it. I had the dust all over me. I was often, working late at night and early in the morning, and it has a part of me in it. And I think people appreciate that. And I think for that reason, you have to take the utmost pride in your work. I think it's always important to sign your work. I think that that's a part of what differentiates it, is showing people that an artisan made this. This isn't something that was made in a factory. This isn't something that was made by a machine. I think I used to do it just because I liked making things. But now, with the YouTube channel, we get a lot of really positive comments. And some of the best ones are when people say, I watch your videos with my daughter, or with my granddaughter, or with my niece. I guess my biggest hope, or my biggest goal now, would be to inspire people to try something new, to try something that they haven't tried, or that maybe at some point in time they didn't think they could do. To pursue things that make them happy. Thank you so much for watching, and let us know in the comments what you're working on. I look forward to hearing from you guys. Till next time. Thank you so much for watching. If you like what you saw, I do hope that you'll hit subscribe, and don't forget the little notifications bell so you don't miss any of our upcoming videos. And please let us know what you think in the comments. We love to hear back from you guys. I would like to take a moment to give a big shout out to all of my Patreon members. Thank you so much. We really appreciate all of your support, and especially in times like these, it really helps us to continue to bring you high quality photos and video to all of the social media channels. I would especially like to give a big shout out to my top tier patrons: Andrew Nidal, Chris Cairns, Dr. David Matheson, Erica Vane, Jim Tate, Chris Jones, Leonard Crowell, Mark Glonek, Robert Hunt, and Steve Snyder. Thank you so much. If you would like a behind-the-scenes look at what's going on here in Charleston, or if you would like to have a heads up before everybody else when I schedule my new classes, and yes, I will be scheduling new classes for early 2021, then head on over to the Patreon page and check it out. Well, thanks again, guys. Until next time.